You ever have one of those moments where the universe just hands you a golden opportunity on a silver platter? Like a perfectly wrapped gift, tied up with a bow, with a little tag that says, "Go ahead, ruin her." That's exactly how I felt when I found out my wife was cheating on me. Not just cheating, oh no, that would be too simple. She was having an affair with her boss. A married boss. At the company where I was the one who pulled strings to get her hired in the first place. The sheer poetry of it was almost admirable. Almost. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't punch walls or drown myself in whiskey like some heartbroken fool in a bad movie. No, I sat there, staring at the text on her unlocked phone while she was in the shower, and I smiled. Not a happy smile. Not even an angry one. The kind of smile a hunter wears when he finally spots his prey after hours of patient waiting. Because I wasn't just going to leave. I wasn't going to have some dramatic confrontation where she'd cry and beg for forgiveness, and I'd storm off like a wounded hero. No, that wasn't nearly enough. She wanted to play dirty? Then I'd make sure she never played again. The texts told me everything I needed to know. They weren't just your standard, "I miss you," and "I can't wait to see you again," garbage. No, these were detailed. Plans. Meetings. Hotel bookings. And, most importantly, a work trip scheduled for the next month. A corporate event where she and her boss would be together, networking while their unsuspecting spouses stayed home. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I put her phone back exactly where I found it, walked into the bathroom where she was humming some stupid love song, and kissed her on the forehead like nothing had changed. Because for her, nothing had. She was still living in the comfortable delusion that she was getting away with it. That I was the fool who didn't see the knife sticking out of his back. That made it all the more satisfying. I spent the next 2 weeks watching, listening, gathering. Every excuse she made to stay late. Every girls' night that didn't exist. Every time she looked at her phone and smiled like some lovesick teenager. I noted it all. Screenshot after screenshot. A little spy software on her laptop. A voice recorder in the car. I had enough evidence to make even the most expensive divorce lawyer burst into laughter. But a simple divorce wasn't what I wanted. That would be too easy. See, my wife wasn't just an employee at her company. She was climbing. She was ambitious, always talking about how she'd be running things in a few years, how she was too smart to be stuck in a dead-end marriage like some of her friends. And her boss? He was the golden ticket. The man who could make or break careers with a single email. I had no doubt she thought she was playing him as much as he was playing her. But she was about to learn something very important about real power. The event was a big deal. High-profile clients. Executives. A press presence. It was the kind of event where everything had to be perfect, where one wrong move could tank reputations overnight. My wife had been bragging about it for weeks, how she was in charge of a major presentation that would prove she was leadership material. And her boss? Well, let's just say he had everything riding on this deal. So I made sure they'd both remember it forever. I spent a little time with an IT guy I knew, a real genius when it came to things like email security and corporate networks. Turns out, it's shockingly easy to get access to a company's presentation system when you know where to look. Especially when you have someone on the inside who hates his boss and wouldn't mind a little anonymous assistance in bringing him down. Money well spent. The day before the event, I kissed my wife goodbye and told her I'd see her when she got back. She smiled, kissed me back, and said she'd call me later. She didn't. Of course, she didn't. She was too busy preparing. Too busy sneaking off to spend the night with her mentor. I wasn't worried. Because I knew exactly what was going to happen the next day. She would walk onto that stage, confident, professional, the picture of a rising corporate star. She'd start her presentation, all eyes on her. The audience would be filled with important people, investors, executives, journalists. And then, right when she reached the most critical slide, the one where she was supposed to showcase her vision for the future, the screen would flicker. The images would change. And instead of stock photos and bar charts, the entire room would be treated to a carefully curated collection of her most intimate moments with her boss. Every text, every photo, every explicit message, blown up for everyone to see. A career ruined. A reputation shattered. And the best part? I wouldn't even be there to see it. I'd be at home, sipping a drink, waiting for the inevitable phone call. Waiting for her to realize that I was never the fool she thought I was. Waiting for the moment she understood, with perfect clarity, that this wasn't an accident. It was a reckoning. And it was only just beginning. I used to think I had the kind of life other men envied. Not perfect, because nothing ever is, but good. Stable. comfortable in the way that made you feel like, no matter what, you had a place in the world. I had a wife I loved, a home we built together, and a future that felt secure. We weren't the kind of couple that was obsessed with each other, but we had a rhythm. The kind that made life easy, predictable, like a well-rehearsed dance. Mornings were always the same. I'd wake up first, make coffee, and read the news while she got an extra 20 minutes of sleep. Then she'd come down, yawning, stretching, kissing me absent-mindedly on the cheek before rummaging through the fridge. She always complained we never had anything exciting for breakfast, but she never did the shopping, so the routine stayed. Oatmeal, eggs, toast. The same thing every morning. Then a quick kiss before she rushed off to work, always in a hurry, always running a little late. It was our thing. Evenings were slower. We'd eat together, sometimes takeout, sometimes something I cooked if I got home first. She'd tell me about work, the office drama, who was getting promoted, who was screwing up. She'd roll her eyes when talking about her boss, calling him arrogant, self-absorbed, one of those guys who thinks the world revolves around him. I'd nod, half listening, because it didn't really matter. Just workplace nonsense. And then we'd sit on the couch, half watching some show, half scrolling through our phones, comfortable in our silence. That was life. Simple. Familiar. And I never questioned it. Looking back, I see the cracks now. Tiny, insignificant things at the time. The way she used to laugh more when we first got together, how that had faded over the years into polite chuckles and small smiles. The way she'd reach for my hand absent-mindedly in the early days, but now only touch me when it was necessary, a hello, a goodbye, a moment of routine affection rather than instinct. The way she used to ask about my day, really listen, but then started just nodding along while tapping at her phone. Small things. Things you don't notice when you're in the middle of them. I thought it was just time. That inevitable shift every couple goes through, when the excitement dulls into something quieter, more reliable. I thought this was just how it was supposed to be after years together. I never thought it meant she was already gone. We had inside jokes. Little traditions that made me feel like, no matter how routine life got, we were still connected. Friday nights were movie nights. No going out, no distractions, just the two of us, sitting in the dark, watching something ridiculous while sharing a bowl of popcorn. We never finished the popcorn. She always fell asleep halfway through, curled up next to me, breathing steady and warm. That was our thing. Sunday mornings, we went to the same little cafe down the street. She always ordered the same thing: black coffee, extra sugar, a croissant she'd only eat half of before pushing it toward me. She'd scroll through her phone, showing me stupid memes, telling me about some influencer's latest scandal. And I'd sit there, drinking my coffee, nodding, thinking, this is good. This is enough. There were other moments. The way she'd sing in the car, badly, off-key but confident. The way she'd steal my hoodies when it was cold, even though she had 100 sweaters of her own. The way she always forgot where she left her keys, and I was always the one who had to find them. Little things. Pieces of a life we built together. A life I thought meant something. Then there were the signs. The ones I ignored because they were too small to matter. The way her phone was always face down lately. She used to leave it anywhere, on the counter, on the table, unlocked, forgotten. Now, it was always in her hand, always turned away, always with the screen dark when I walked into the room. The way she started staying late at work more often. At first, it was once or twice a week. Then it was 3 times. Then it was nearly every night. Big project, she said. A lot on my plate. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? The way she suddenly started caring more about how she looked. New clothes, new perfume, working out more. She said she just wanted to feel good, that she was getting older, that it was about self-care. That made sense. I told her she looked great. The way she started pulling away in small, almost unnoticeable ways. The way she hesitated before kissing me. The way she never really looked me in the eyes anymore when she said, I love you. The way she'd turn just slightly when I reached for her at night, as if even in sleep, she was creating space between us. I ignored all of it. Because I trusted her. Because when you've built a life with someone, you don't want to believe that they could be tearing it down behind your back. You don't want to look at the person you've shared years with and wonder if every laugh, every touch, every moment was just an act. So I let it slide. I let the excuses pile up. I let myself believe that it was just a rough patch, that things would go back to normal, that we just needed to put in more effort. Until the night I saw the texts. Until I sat there, reading every disgusting, pathetic message, the I miss you and I can't wait to feel you again, and the plans they were making. all while she lay asleep upstairs in our bed like nothing was wrong. And in that moment, everything shifted. The warmth? Gone. The routine? Meaningless. The memories? Poisoned. There was no heartbreak. No sadness. No questions. Just one simple, unshakable realization. It's my turn now. It started with something small. So small, in fact, that most people wouldn't have thought twice about it. But I'm not most people. I've always trusted my instincts, and that night, something felt off. It was a Wednesday, nothing special about it. I got home from work at the usual time, expecting to find my wife in the kitchen, half-heartedly chopping vegetables while complaining about how long her day was. It was our routine, her pretending to cook, me stepping in after 10 minutes when she got bored, both of us eating together like we always had. But that night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No music playing, no TV on in the background, no sounds of movement upstairs. Just silence. Her car was in the driveway, so I knew she was home. I set my keys down, walked toward the living room, and that's when I heard it, the hushed voice from upstairs. At first, I couldn't make out the words. Just a low, urgent tone, the kind people use when they don't want to be overheard. I stepped closer to the staircase, careful, silent, like I was walking up on a wild animal that would bolt if it sensed me. And then, just for a second, I heard her laugh. Not just any laugh. That laugh. The kind she used to give me when we first started dating. The light, teasing, playful laugh that told me she was enjoying whoever was on the other end of that call. Something cold settled in my stomach. I wasn't the paranoid type. I wasn't the kind of guy who jumped to conclusions over nothing. But I wasn't stupid either. There are things a man just knows. Instincts that are carved into our bones. And in that moment, mine were screaming. I moved back before she could realize I was home. Gave it another minute before making noise, jingling my keys, letting the door shut a little harder than necessary. By the time I walked into the kitchen, she was there, leaning against the counter like she had been there all along, scrolling through her phone, pretending to be relaxed. But I noticed the little things. The way she exhaled a little too deeply, like she had just come down from something. The slight tension in her shoulders. The way she locked her phone and slid it face down onto the counter. She looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong. Hey babe. Long day. A normal question. A normal night. But now I was watching. Something was different. I played along, because that's what you do when you don't have all the pieces yet. I kissed her on the cheek, watched how she leaned into it just enough to make it feel natural, but not enough to feel real. She asked about dinner. I offered to cook, and she didn't argue. Another break in the pattern. Usually, she'd at least pretend to help. I went through the motions, casual, easy, but in the back of my mind, I was replaying the call, the tone, the laugh. And then it happened. Her phone lit up. She didn't notice at first, too busy scrolling through some meaningless nonsense on her laptop. But I did. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the name flash across the screen. A first name. No last name. No contact photo. Just a name I'd never seen before. Then, just as quickly, the screen went dark. That was when she noticed. Her body tensed, just for a split second, but I caught it. I waited. She didn't pick up the phone. Didn't check the message. She just reached out, flipped the phone over, and kept staring at her laptop like nothing had happened. A mistake. A mistake she didn't even realize she had made. If she had nothing to hide, she would have glanced at the screen. Maybe even made some offhand comment about the message, some harmless explanation about who it was. But she didn't. She pretended it wasn't there. That's when I knew. Not the full story, not yet. But I knew enough. So I played my part. I didn't ask about the call. I didn't mention the text. I acted like the same man I had been before that night, because that was what I needed her to believe. For the first time in our marriage, I started watching her the way a predator watches prey. Because something had changed. And I was going to find out exactly what it was. I didn't ask questions. Questions gave her control. Questions gave her the chance to lie, to cover her tracks, to manipulate the story. Instead, I observed, I listened, I waited, because when people think they're not being watched, they get careless, and carelessness is where the truth lies. The first thing I noticed was her phone. She never used to care about it before. She'd leave it lying around, face up, unlocked, forgotten. Now it was always with her, always in her hand or tucked away in her bag, screen facing down, always notifications coming in, and her. I was flicking to them quick like a reflex, but never reacting. Not in front of me. She didn't smile at texts anymore, didn't sigh in annoyance, didn't roll her eyes at some dumb group chat message. She just saw them and ignored them like she was pretending they weren't there because she knew I was watching. Then there were the passwords. I didn't snoop at first because I didn't have to. We'd always had a pretty open-door policy when it came to our devices. I knew her passcode, she knew mine, but one night while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone just to move it off. The couch screen lit up, and instead of the usual lock screen, I saw the words Face ID required, new security setting, new rule, one she hadn't mentioned, and one she definitely hadn't asked me to set up on my phone either. A small thing, but small things add up. Next was her schedule. She'd never been the most organized person, always left notes on the fridge, reminders in her planner, but suddenly she had everything down to a science, working late twice a week, always on the same days, new gym routine, always at the same time, always showering immediately after she got home, not before, not later, always right when she walked in, like she needed to wash something off before seeing me, and when I casually mentioned maybe dropping by the gym with her sometime, her answer came too fast, too smooth. Oh, you wouldn't like it, it's all classes, you'd be bored. Lies were funny like that. The truth has a rhythm, it flows naturally, but lies always feel just a little too polished. The final push came when I decided to test her. Nothing obvious, nothing dramatic. I just asked where she was going one evening, just an innocent question. As she grabbed her bag, she hesitated for half a second and said she was meeting a friend for dinner, someone she hadn't mentioned in months, someone she never really spent time with outside of group events. Oh, cool, I said. Where you going? She hesitated again, just for a second. Some Italian place, she said. Downtown. She didn't name it, just some Italian place, vague, safe, easy to shift later if she needed to. I nodded, kissed her goodbye, waited 5 minutes, then pulled out my phone and checked our shared location settings. We had them for emergencies, for convenience only. Now hers were turned off, not disabled for both of us, just hers. Interesting. I wasn't an idiot. I wasn't going to follow her like some jealous teenager, but I had tools she didn't even realize I still had. See, she wasn't the only one who had forgotten things over the years. She might have changed her passwords, but she hadn't changed her habits. She still used the same email, the same Apple ID, and that meant I still had access to a little thing called Find My iPhone. I opened the app and watched as the little dot that was supposed to be at some Italian place downtown wasn't downtown at all, wasn't even at a restaurant. It was in a residential area across the city, sitting there unmoving for 2 hours, 2 hours at some stranger's house, someplace she had no reason to be. I didn't call, I didn't text, I didn't even get angry. I just memorized the address. Then I put my phone away, made dinner, watched a movie like nothing had changed, because as far as she knew, nothing had. By the time she came home, she smelled different, not perfume, not soap, just different, like a place that wasn't ours. She smiled like everything was fine, kissed me like everything was normal, and I smiled back because now I wasn't guessing anymore. Now I wasn't suspecting, now I was sure. And now I had a plan. I don't believe in coincidences, not anymore, not after what I saw, not after the way every small suspicion, every quiet doubt, every tiny crack in my reality suddenly snapped into focus like a camera lens sharpening until the picture was so clear it couldn't be ignored anymore. It happened on a Monday, a completely ordinary day, the kind of day that doesn't warn you that your entire life is about to shift, that the ground beneath you is about to cave in. She was in the shower. I was in the bedroom scrolling through emails, half distracted, when I heard the notification ping. Not from my phone, from hers, from the bathroom. The shower was still running. She hadn't heard it. I almost ignored it, almost let it go, but something in me, some cold, precise instinct, told me to look. I didn't touch her phone, didn't need to. The message flashed on the lock screen just long enough for me to see it before the screen dimmed, just long enough for my blue D to turn to ice, just long enough for the universe to whisper, there it is. Can't stop thinking about last night. No name, no details, but I didn't need them. The meaning was there, hanging in the air, heavy, suffocating, undeniable. I stared at the phone, at the screen that now held more truth than her words ever had, and I felt something shift inside me, not sadness, not heartbreak, just cold clarity. I had been right. I waited, didn't move, didn't react, just let the moment stretch, let the truth settle inside me like steel being forged, because now it was real. Now I wasn't just suspecting, now I knew. She came out of the shower wrapped in a towel, smiling like she hadn't just been exposed, like she wasn't standing inches away from the man who had just seen the cracks in her mask. I watched her move, so normal, so casual, kissing my cheek, like every other morning, completely unaware that something in me had changed forever. I let the day play out because now I wasn't just watching, I was waiting. Every detail, every movement, every small lie was another puzzle piece locking into place. I didn't mention the message, didn't touch her phone, because I wanted more. I wanted proof, so clear, so absolute, that even she wouldn't be able to deny it. That night, she said she was meeting a friend, dinner again, late night. I smiled, kissed her, told her to have fun, and the second she walked out the door, I grabbed my keys, and I followed. I didn't rush, I didn't need to. I already knew she wasn't going downtown. I had the address burned into my mind from the last time. She had no idea how sloppy she had been how much she had underestimated me. I drove slow, took my time until I parked a block away, heart steady, hands calm, because this wasn't a surprise anymore, this was just confirmation. Her car was already there, parked in the driveway of his house. I sat there watching, waiting, knowing exactly what I was going to do next. Not rage, not chaos. I was done being the fool, done being the man who trusted, done being the good husband. I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, zoomed and took pictures of the license plates of the house, of her walking up to the door. A few minutes later, the porch light went off. I leaned back in my seat, exhaled slow, steady, because there it was, the final piece, the one thing I needed to erase any last doubt. She wasn't just cheating, she was comfortable, she was confident, she was deep into this lie, and she thought she was getting away with it. But she wasn't, because now I held the knife. And I was going to make sure she felt every inch of the blade. I didn't act right away. Acting too soon meant acting on emotion, and emotion was messy, it was reckless, it made people make mistakes, and I wasn't about to make mistakes. I wasn't about to confront her and give her the chance to spin a story, to twist reality, to make herself the victim. No, I needed something better, something final, something she could never recover from, not with words, not with apologies, not with lies. She thought she was smart, that she had me wrapped around her finger, that I was just another blind husband, too busy trusting, too busy loving to see what was right in front of me. But she had no idea that I had been watching, listening, collecting every small detail, every lie, every excuse, every moment. She thought she was getting away with it, and now I was going to use it all against her. I thought about the obvious options: exposure, confrontation, anger. But none of them were enough, because people like her don't fear shame, they don't fear guilt, they don't fear getting caught. They only fear losing everything they built. And that was exactly what I was going to take from her, piece by piece, methodically, surgically, until there was nothing left. Her career was everything to her. She had worked her way up, clawed for every promotion, played the office politics game with precision, always positioning herself for the next step. She wasn't just an employee, she was an asset, someone her company saw as a rising star, a future leader, and I knew something she didn't know. I knew how fragile that position really was. Her affair wasn't just an affair, it was a career-ending scandal waiting to happen. She was sleeping with her boss, a married man, a man with everything to lose if the truth came out, a man who had power, but not enough to protect them both if the right people found out. And I was going to make sure they did. But not in the way she'd expect, not in some dramatic outburst, not in some angry email, no, that would give her time to prepare, to spin a story, to play the victim. Instead, I was going to let the truth destroy her on its own. I just had to guide it in the right direction. I started small, whispers, quiet suggestions to the right people, an anonymous tip to HR, a message to a particularly nosy coworker, one who thrived on office gossip, one who would take a tiny piece of information and turn it into wildfire. I didn't have to give much, just enough to make them start looking. Then I went deeper. I accessed her work emails, not through hacking, not through anything illegal. No, she had left herself wide open, laptop, unattended, password saved, autofill working in my favor, and what I found was gold: private messages, meeting confirmations, even a hotel invoice tied directly to her company's expense account. Not only was she having an affair, she was using company funds to do it. That was the kill shot. A carefully crafted email scheduled to send at just the right moment during the biggest corporate event of the year, the one where she and her boss were supposed to shine, where she was supposed to prove herself to the entire executive board. An email containing everything: screenshots of messages, evidence of misused funds, even a breakdown of timeline inconsistencies that would make them question every single business trip, every late-night meeting, every excuse she had ever given to leave early or stay late. It was all laid out clean, precise, irrefutable. And the best part was that it wouldn't come from me. It would come from her, or at least from what would appear to be her, a pre-scheduled email sent from her account to the entire leadership team, making it look like some disastrous accidental sent mistake she couldn't undo. She wouldn't know it was coming. She'd be standing there on stage, presenting, smiling, confident, ready for her next big move, and then her phone would start buzzing, people in the audience whispering, looks shifting from interest to disgust, and before she even realized what was happening, her career, her reputation, her future would be dead in the water. I imagined it, the slow unraveling, the moment of realization, the sheer horror creeping across her face as she understood that she wasn't just caught, she was done, and all she'd be able to do was stand there and watch it happen. It wasn't just revenge, it was justice, cold, calculated, and completely undeniable. And the best part, the part that made it all perfect, was that when it was over, when she came home broken, desperate, scrambling for an explanation, for some way to salvage what was left, she'd find me sitting there, calm, bags already packed, keys left on the table, divorce papers signed, waiting for her with nothing left to say. Because I wasn't going to scream, I wasn't going to argue, I wasn't even going to give her the satisfaction of my anger. She wasn't worth it, not anymore. I was just going to watch her fall. There was something almost surgical about setting the trap. Every detail had to be precise, every move calculated, no emotion, no hesitation, just the cold, methodical process of removing a tumor, because that's what she had become, a parasite feeding off the life I had built, believing she was untouchable, believing she could keep playing her little game while I stayed in the dark. But she had made a mistake, she underestimated me, and now she was about to learn that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. The event was perfect. It wasn't just any corporate meeting, it was the meeting, the one that would define her career, the one where she was set to present to the executives, the board, the investors, her moment to prove she was leadership material, to secure her next promotion, to cement her future. But now it was going to cement something else, her downfall. I had already laid the groundwork. The emails were pre-scheduled, the files meticulously arranged. I had ensured that the HR team, the finance department, and even the CEO himself would receive the damning evidence all at once, everything tied together so neatly. They wouldn't even need to investigate. Her guilt would be obvious, undeniable, and by the time she realized what was happening, it would already be too late. But I wasn't going to miss the show. I made sure to arrive early, blending into the background among the other attendees, just another corporate guest sipping coffee, watching the stage, watching her. She was confident, glowing, even dressed to impress, standing with her colleagues, smiling, laughing, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse around her. Then the moment came, the lights dimmed, the screens lit up, and she stepped onto the stage, ready to deliver the most important presentation of her career, her voice steady, her posture poised. But I knew what was coming. The first ripple was subtle, a phone screen lighting up in the audience, then another and another, people shifting in their seats, murmuring as notifications popped up all at once, emails being read, brows furrowing, glances being exchanged, her boss's face going pale as he checked his own phone, stiffening in his chair like he had just been handed a death sentence. And then it hit her. I saw it the exact second she knew something was wrong, the way her eyes darted to the audience, the slight falter in her voice, the confusion creeping into her expression as she saw the shifting attention, people whispering, not looking at her slides anymore, but at their phones, at each other. She tried to keep going, pushing through the presentation, but the tension was growing, pressing down on the room like a storm about to break. The CEO leaned over to his assistant, spoke in hushed tones, then slowly stood up and walked out. Others followed, one by one, executives leaving the room, not even bothering to stay for the rest of her speech. She kept going, voice cracking, now trying to regain control, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her gut that something was very, very wrong. And then her boss's phone rang. He answered right there in his seat, and I watched as the color drained from his face, as he closed his eyes like a man watching his entire life implode in real time. He stood up abruptly, muttered something to the person next to him, and walked out, his expression blank, his hands shaking. She was alone now. Still on stage, still talking, but no one was listening anymore. The only sounds were whispers, the rustling of papers, the weight of realization crashing over the entire audience. And then her own phone lit up. I saw it, the way her face dropped as she read the message, the way her hands gripped the podium just a little tighter, the way her breath hitched like she had just been punched in the stomach. I didn't need to hear what it said, I already knew. She was done. I stood up quietly, no need to stay, no need for a confrontation, no need for anything else. She had already lost everything before she even finished her speech. By the time she got off that stage, her career would be over, her reputation shredded, her future obliterated, and there wasn't a single thing she could do to stop it. I walked out of that room without looking back, while behind me her world burned. I didn't have to wait long. By the time I got home, she was already calling me over and over, her name flashing across my screen like a desperate alarm bell ringing in an empty house. I let it ring, I let it go to voicemail. I let her feel it, the silence, the void, the creeping realization that I wasn't waiting for her, that I wasn't there to comfort her, that she was on her own, now drowning in the consequences of her own choices. An hour later, the front door burst open. She was frantic, breathless, like she had run straight from the event, her makeup smudged, her hair a mess, her eyes wild with panic. She looked at me like I was supposed to fix it, like I was supposed to be the safe place she could run to, like she hadn't just been exposed in front of everyone who once respected her. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand, stopping her mid-step, and for the first time in our marriage, she hesitated. "Sit," I said, voice calm, steady, controlled. I gestured to the couch, the same couch where we had spent years watching movies, eating dinner, talking about our days back, when I thought our life was real, back when I thought she was real. She swallowed hard. I could see her brain scrambling, grasping for the right words, for the right lie, but she didn't have one, not this time. She sat down, hands gripping her knees, as if she could steady herself against the storm she never saw coming. I walked over to the table, picked up the folder I had prepared weeks ago, placed it gently in front of her, and then sat across from her, not touching her, not giving her an inch of comfort, just watching as she stared at it like it might bite her. "Open it," I said. Her hands shook as she reached out, slowly peeling back the cover, and then she saw it, all the evidence, every screenshot, every email, every text, every single detail, laid out so clearly, so perfectly that denial wasn't an option. Her lips parted, a small broken sound escaping her throat as she flipped through page after page, her breathing shallow, her face pale, like she was physically ill. I leaned back, arms crossed, watching as she fell apart in real time, her mind racing through every possibility, every excuse, every pathetic attempt to explain away the unexplainable. She looked up at me, eyes glassy, desperate. "I can explain," she whispered, voice hoarse. I didn't say a word, just tilted my head, waiting, because I wanted to hear this. I wanted to hear what excuse she thought could erase the reality in front of her. "It wasn't serious," she choked out. "It was just a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen." "A mistake," I repeated, my voice flat, my expression blank. "How many times did you accidentally drive to his house? How many times did you accidentally book a hotel? How many times did you accidentally lie to my face?" She flinched, tears spilling over now, real genuine panic settling in, because she wasn't in control anymore. "I made a mistake," she said again, like repeating it would somehow make it true. "But you have to understand, it didn't mean anything. You mean everything. Please, you have to believe that." I laughed, then a small, humorless chuckle, shaking my head. That was the moment I saw it, real fear, not of losing me, not of losing our marriage, but of losing everything else, the security, the stability, the image she had built of herself as a woman who had it all, the perfect husband, the perfect career, the perfect life. And now she was watching it slip through her fingers faster than she could hold on. "Please," she whispered, reaching for my hand, but I pulled back and that was what finally broke her shoulders shaking, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she begged, "Let's fix this. We can fix this. Just tell me what to do. Tell me what you need." I stood up, walked to the hallway, picked up the suitcase I had packed days ago, set it by the door, turned back to her, my face unreadable. "Nothing to fix," I said. "You already did that all on your own." She shook her head violently, standing up, rushing toward me, reaching out like she could stop me from leaving, but I stepped aside, let her stumble forward, grasping at nothing, let her feel that empty, helpless panic, let her understand what it was like to be discarded, to be powerless. "You don't get to do this," she cried, voice breaking. "I do," I said, voice cold, final, calm. "You already made your choice. I'm just giving you the result." Her hands trembled at her sides, her body swaying like she might collapse, but I didn't care, not anymore. This was what she deserved. This was justice. I picked up my keys, stepped past her toward the door. She called my name one last time, small, broken, nothing like the confident woman she had been an hour ago, but I didn't turn back. I walked out and left her standing there alone in the wreckage of everything she destroyed. It didn't take long for everything to fall apart. The beauty of my plan was that I didn't need to chase the fallout. I didn't need to rub it in or watch from the sidelines. The damage had already been done, and now all I had to do was sit back and let the world devour her. Her career? Gone overnight. The moment the emails were sent, HR had no choice but to act. There was no spin, no damage control, no way for her to paint herself as a victim. She had been using company funds for personal affairs, crossing lines that couldn't be ignored, and worse, she had been doing it with a married superior. Corporate didn't hesitate. She was terminated immediately, escorted out of the building before she even had time to understand just how much she had lost. No farewell emails, no explanations to her colleagues. Just a quiet, humiliating exit with security watching her every step. And her boss? He didn't escape either. The higher-ups didn't care about personal mistakes, but they cared about liability. The moment the evidence landed in their inboxes, his fate was sealed. He was forced to resign under the guise of a mutual decision, but everyone knew the truth. His reputation destroyed, his power stripped away. And the best part? His wife left him too. I made sure of that. A neatly packaged email sent to her as well, giving her all the details she needed. She filed for divorce within the week. So now my wife was jobless and her affair partner was ruined. But the destruction didn't stop there. Her friends? They turned on her instantly. The moment everything went public, she became radioactive. No one wanted to be associated with her. People whispered. The ones she had once bragged to, the ones she had built her social status around, they abandoned her without hesitation. Not because they were loyal to me, most of them didn't even care about that, but because in their world, she was a liability now. Her family? They were worse. Her parents were ashamed, not just because of the affair but because of how public it had become. They didn't want the whispers, the side glances at family events. They didn't want their daughter to be the one everyone pitted or judged. So they distanced themselves. Calls went unanswered. Invitations disappeared. She was left adrift, clinging to the few people who still spoke to her. But even they had limits. And me? I thrived. The divorce was swift. I made sure of that. She had no leverage, no bargaining power. She knew fighting for anything meant dragging out the humiliation even longer, so she signed without argument. I took everything I wanted. The house? Mine. The assets? Secured. She walked away with nothing but regret, a shell of the woman who once thought she could have it all. I moved on, quickly and effortlessly. I wasn't broken. I wasn't haunted. There was no part of me that longed for what we had because now I understood we never had anything real. I started dating again, but this time on my terms, with my eyes wide open. And I made sure she knew. I never reached out, never spoke to her again. But she saw. She watched from a distance, through social media, through mutual friends, through every reminder that I had one completely. She saw the photos, the new life, the way I had moved forward without so much as a glance back. And she? She was stuck. No job, no career, no social circle, no power. That's what she feared the most, not the loss of our marriage, not even the guilt of what she did, but the loss of control. The realization that for the first time in her life, she was truly, completely alone. And that was the real revenge. Because I didn't just leave her. I erased her. Some people say revenge isn't worth it, that you should just walk away, that you should be the bigger person, let karma do the work, let time take care of the rest. But let me ask you something, would you really be able to sleep at night knowing they got away with it, knowing they still had their career, their reputation, their life intact while you were left picking up the pieces? Would you be able to look in the mirror and accept that you let them win, that they got to walk away unscathed while you carried the weight of their betrayal? Because I couldn't let her rewrite the story. I couldn't let her be the one who moved on easily while I was left with the mess. So I made sure there was no question about how this ended, no room for interpretation, no chance for her to twist the narrative in her favor. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't misunderstood. She wasn't some tragic figure who made a mistake and lost everything. She was the one who made her bed, and I just made sure she had to lie in it alone. And now that it's done, now that the dust has settled and I have everything I wanted, I don't feel guilt, I don't feel regret, I don't feel anything except satisfaction, because justice isn't about forgiveness, it isn't about letting go, it's about balance, and I made sure the scales were set right again. She took something from me, something I could never get back, so I took everything from her. I could have just walked away, I could have let her keep her job, keep her social circle, keep her illusion of control, but why should she get to pretend that her actions didn't have consequences? Why should she get to keep living a life built on lies while I was expected to start over from nothing? No, that wasn't good enough. So now here I am with my life intact, with my future ahead of me, and with the knowledge that she wakes up every single day knowing that she lost not just me, but everything she ever cared about: her career, her reputation, her sense of security, the admiration of her peers, the respect of her family. She doesn't get to erase what she did. She doesn't get to rewrite history. She doesn't get to be the woman who made a mistake and learned from it. She gets to be the woman who destroyed herself because she thought she was untouchable. And maybe some of you will say I went too far, that I should have let karma handle it, that I should have just walked away and let life take its course. But let me ask you this: what would you have done in my place if you were me, if you had the proof, if you had the power, if you had the ability to make sure they paid for what they did? Would you really just let it go? Would you really just walk away and leave them with even the smallest piece of the life they tried to steal from you? Because I don't think you would. I think you'd want justice. I think you'd want to make sure they felt the same helplessness, the same humiliation, the same loss of control that they put you through. So tell me, would you have done the same, or would you have let them get away with it?